Welcome to part 2 of the Power Women of the Trades podcast.
Hi, I'm Kelly Rowlett-Presgrave. I'm president and CEO of Work With Your Hands, and we are so proud to be a sponsor of Power Women of the Trades podcast. You can reach us at workwithyourhands.com. Kelly at workwithyourhands.com is my email.
At Relentless Digital, we believe in breaking barriers and driving innovation. That's why we are extremely proud to sponsor the Power Women of the Trades podcast, supporting the voices and success of women in the home service industry. Together, we're creating a future where talent shines, regardless of gender, and diversity thrives. Join our journey at relentless-digital.com and always be relentless in your pursuit of excellence.
This episode of Power Women of the Trades is also brought to you by Forrest Perry of Forrest Perry Digital Marketing. Want to generate more leads for your service business? Trust his team to deliver quality new customer leads and protect your brand online. Check out perrymarketing.com today.
Welcome to Power Women of the Trades podcast. This show is all about breaking barriers and changing the game. Our guests will feature some of today's most successful female entrepreneurs and other advocates of our industry as well. Because if there's one thing we know for sure, female-led entrepreneurship drives change on multiple levels. We want to empower women in the trade industry like you so you can maximize your potential, stay balanced, achieve long-term success, and claim ownership over your life. Let's get started.
You don't realize the things that you need to talk about until you talk about it with someone who does it. Because, I have friends and I love them and they're amazing that are not in our trade, in our space at all. And they haven't necessarily, it's basically like, it's just heat and air, right? It's just plumbing. It's just electric. I don't think that they mean it like that, but it's on the outside, it's just that, right? But I actually just said that last week to our management team. I said, guys, if we just were able to do heating, air, plumbing, and electric, this would be easy, right? But we're also marketers. We're also people, Oscar calls it, we're adult personality analyzers. Because,
yes.
Every day you're dealing with something. And that was something that I carried all the time. I was like, why is our team like, you feel like you get one team under control and then another one's kind of like spiraling? And the best advice I ever had from one of our mentors, he said, at that point, we had 55 people that worked for us. And he said, when was the last time that you had 55 good days in a row? And I was like, probably never. And he's like, so you can't expect your team to have a good day every day. He was like, someone's always going to have a bad day. And if you told me every day it was amazing, I would tell you you're not leading. And I'm like, okay, that's true. So I remind myself of that. But until I started talking to people who have experience in our space, I just thought I was losing my mind all the time. I was like, man, if our team could just get it together, if I could do this, and it's like, none of those things actually ever happen. Everyone's a little bit of a shit show every day.
Yeah,
that's just the truth.
It's the truth. And, my mindset prior to coming into the business was, I'm very task oriented. So get the team together, get everyone cohesive, all on the same page, and everybody's doing great. Check that off the list. And then it stays that way. Well, that's not the reality of it, right? So it doesn't work that way. Yeah. And I think one of the hardest parts of it is managing all the different personalities on your team and making sure that everyone has what they need to be successful. Yeah. And, I did that as a teacher, but in a different capacity and a different level. So I kind of have a little bit of experience in that, but this is a whole different animal, And
then especially as you scale, you guys going from 1 to 8 trucks in 3 years, that's a huge growth, right? And one thing with our management team here, I sometimes have to remind them, like, we were talking about recalls specifically, and they're like, we've had a lot of recalls. And I'm like, okay, really? Because I didn't feel like we had, but, and so the truth is that it seemed like we had a lot of recalls, but they weren't taking into the account of how many calls we've ran, right? When you grow in quantity, the percentage was still the same. It was still the percentage we've always shot for. We want our recalls under this number, right? It was still there, but it seemed more because we run 70 calls a day now, right? Well, 2 years ago, we were running 25 calls a day, right? So the perception perception, we don't always take that into account. We're just like, wait, we're screwing everything up because we scaled so quickly or we did this and we're not paying attention to what comes with that growth too.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's a lot involved that comes with the growth. I mean, and like you said, the probability and the chances of a higher rate of recall is just natural because you're booking more calls and you're serving more clients, right? So that's absolutely true. And then I think with the rapid growth too, what you don't take into account a lot of times is, how your team grows so quickly and integrating these new people into your team and getting everyone to gel and to mesh, which is not difficult to do, but it's actually fun. It's fun when you have that they come in rapidly. And I also learned in this trade that some come and leave as fast as, they leave as fast as they join, you know what I mean? And I see that kind of turnover too. Yeah. So, rapid growth brings a lot of unexpected.
And then with that too is when you go, because, when we were smaller, I thought that I remember thinking those original 7 people that they would be with us forever. They were going to be there forever. But when we grew and our processes grew, they didn't want that structure. Yes. And so you'll see, and you're probably seeing that now too, like you'll hire someone and they come in and they're like, wait, no, I want to do things on my own. I had this one guy quit one time. He said, I got to go back to my other company. And we were like, okay, why? And he's like, because you guys, I just want to be able to go. We have a cage of like inventory. I want to just go into the cage and get what I want. And we're like, the other company is letting you do that. That's an issue because they have no control over their inventory. But he literally quit because he didn't want that structure. And it's like, we have to know what we're spending. We have to be able to look at our costs. So we are charging our customer the right amount so we can pay you the right amount and those things. But he didn't want that structure. What was wild about that was he was working previously for a company way larger than us. And he had that much control. But when you start, Leslie and I used to say all the time, like people want structure and that's still correct. But I think it's only like 85% of people want structure. Then there's this other percentage that they want the structure of the paycheck consistently, the benefits and the things you offer them, but on their own time, their own agenda. And it's like, you can't have both.
Yeah. Right? It's just a classroom. I mean, I'm bringing it right back to teaching again. It's the same thing. There is 85% of the kids in the classroom that want structure and they thrive off of that. And then, the rest of the class is, that other 15% is just, kind of on their own island and they want to be left on their own island, but they want to know that you're there for support. But yeah, it's a totally different thing. But going back to what you were saying about seeing, employees that you started with, like your 7 core employees and you thought, oh, they're going to be with us for the next 20 years. When I came on with Bobby in 21, he had an employee of his that had been with him for about 4 years and he was a great kid. I called them kids, but he's not a kid, he's an adult and he was a great kid and we loved him. And, as we started to grow, he decided that he wanted to go in a different direction, that it wasn't really suiting him as much anymore. And when my husband came home and told me, I mean, it literally was in the middle of the workday and I happened to be home with the kids that day. I remember they were sick and he said to me, so-and-so decided that he's going to leave. He's not going to be working here anymore. And I was devastated because I thought, what are we going to do? At the time we only had him and one other technician and I didn't know what was going to happen. And then the other technician that we had just recently hired. And so this technician had known our whole process. He knew our clients. He knew what we were about. He knew what our culture was about. And now we have another technician that just joined us that doesn't really know all of that we're in the process of training. How is our business going to run? And it's amazing how I was scared. I was crying. I didn't know what we were going to do. And my husband said, I don't want you to worry about anything. We're going to make this work and everything's going to work out. It's going to be great. And it does. And it's amazing how you just get right on it and you say, okay, let's start hiring. Let's get them in. Let's start interviewing. And then we just started filling trucks. And, I always say with God's grace, we get some of the nicest guys that come to us, that interview for these positions. And, we're very fortunate. So you do think that like, oh, they'll never quit. They'll stay with you, but they don't, you know what I mean?
They can't always see what's next, our biggest struggle at that point was when we were, like I said, just putting processes in of like a simple service call, like, hey, when you go to the service call, do this and make sure you take a picture and those things. And it's like, no, yeah, we've got to do that, and it's just, they just don't always understand that. And then most often what's funny is I've watched these guys leave and go to a company doing exactly what we asked them to do. But because we changed it here, they couldn't mentally accept it.
Most businesses' online presence is boring. And by being boring, they're losing out on potential sales and customers. Being interesting and exciting is what draws customers in and gets them to buy from you. But it's hard to be interesting online when you're focused on running your business and taking care of your customers. It doesn't have to be this way. We have the key to unlocking the solution to your problem. Key Heart Marketing can help take your business from boring to brilliant on social media. We can vouch for them. They run our podcast socials. If you want to have a strong social media presence that allows customers to know, like, and trust you, connect with Key Heart Marketing at keyheartmarketing.com.
Yes, I agree with that, because the change was made while they were growing with you and they know the process, how you first implemented it. And that's the process that they have been following because you told them to follow that process.
Yeah.
And then you say, okay, yeah, we're going to change it up. And this is what we need you to do now. Sometimes they're not willing to do that. You know what I mean? Or like you said, they can't wrap their mind around it and they will leave and they'll go do the same thing somewhere else. I've seen that happen in our business, and it's hard to be a growing company and to have your team understand that as we grow, things are going to change. Really, nothing's set in stone. And I feel like you have to be able to be willing to work with that and say, okay, if they throw something different at me this week, I'm going to go with it. This is my job. This is what I'm here to do. And this is what's going to make me successful. And not everybody's willing to do that,
Do you know who Stephanie Postel is?
I don't.
You're going to have to meet her. I want to introduce you. When we're done, I'll intro you to her. So she was a kindergarten teacher, and she does speaking engagements, and she'll talk about everything I know about business I learned as a kindergarten teacher. Right. And I just think you guys would get that you have so much there. But I love listening to her talk about those things too. It's so funny. I try to be careful because no one wants to be told we're all just people, right? I'm trying to get my thought out the best way without sounding offensive, because I was driving to work and I was I need to talk to, we let our guys do van inspections, which was a great idea. And it is a great idea, but I started noticing that the pictures were the same pictures week over week. And maybe we're just sliding in the pictures, and it's the same thing that you see your kids do, right?
Yes.
And so I was thinking to myself, it's when I ask my kids to clean their room and then I go in there and it's is the room clean? And it looks clean, but then everything's under the bed,
Yeah.
And I want to use that example with our team, but then someone's going to be offended of why are you comparing me to your kids or a kid? And I'm not a kid. But the truth is we're just people, and we're all products of what we've always done,
Yes,
and
correct.
fundamentally, we're creatures of habit. Exactly. And so there's so much of that, you talking about being a teacher, listening to Steph talk about being a teacher, that I think that you have some experience that hard to mimic. I wish I had that experience. The only experience I have is I used to manage, I worked for Best Buy, and I was a manager of 16-year-old cashiers. And so every once in a while, I have some other managers that work here that worked at Best Buy. And I'm every once in a while, it's back to these cashiers, but the truth of it is it's not the kids, it's not the 16-year-olds. It's just, we're all humans that are creatures of habit.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. And, I've never managed anyone. I've never managed adults, and I've never managed anyone outside of the teaching field. And being a teacher is really being a manager, right? Because classroom management is one of the first things that they teach you, or they try to teach you in college. You really don't learn until you get thrown into the classroom, and then you learn how to manage it. That's the most important component. If you can successfully manage your classroom, then your kids are going to learn. But if you can't manage your students and manage your classroom and have processes and procedures and systems that work, then you're never going to be successful in trying to teach them fractions and decimals. It's just not going to work, right?
Right.
So it's the same thing here. So I think for me, coming into the business, I brought that knowledge and that background, and saying to my husband, okay, we have to get this organized. We need a system. Everybody needs to follow the system. We need a process, and we need procedures, because without them, everyone's just doing whatever they want to do.
Running them up,
Yes.
Your ducks are not even in the same pond. They're in different ponds. And your customers feel that though, and that was one of the biggest things for us, is when we started putting all those processes in place, our customers felt that. And that's the goal, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Your customers feel it because, one of our core values is wow service, right? So if everyone is not on the same page and we're not constantly reinforcing our process and our procedure, we can't possibly deliver wow service. And there are times, like I said, we are a growing business, and I'll be real. I mean, there are times when my husband and I are just so busy running the day to day and keeping the business going that we don't always bring the team together for those opportunities to revisit certain jobs or talk about certain things. And sometimes it's difficult for us to schedule those meetings. And then you start, as an owner and as a team member, you start to feel a little bit of a divide and a little bit of separation. And then you start to see it in the results that are out in the field in our clients' homes. And that's when him and I come together and say, okay, we have to bring it back together. We have to make this time. We have to find this time. And that's hard to do, you know what I mean, day to day. But once you get that going and you get regimented, you know, things kind of just gel and stay together.
And then that's your culture. You know, you're constantly having to work on that, the culture of that. And it's so easy, right? Especially, so I know that you guys recently added heating and air.
Yes.
Is that right?
This summer. Yes. Brand new baby.
And you added it in summer.
Yes. Yeah. Well, we started back in the spring, getting ourselves prepared, but you know, you're really never fully prepared. You think you have what you need and what it's going to take, but you really don't. We're still kind of building it as we go. So it's fun. It's exciting. But it's really like building a whole new business from the ground up. Because yes, we have the residential plumbing service side of it, but we didn't have the HVAC side of it, right? So this is brand new and it's very different from plumbing. And it's different types of roles that need to be filled as far as bringing in the employees and hiring the technicians. It's very different than plumbing. So we're pretty much starting from scratch.
When we started plumbing, I was like, well, how hard can it be if we're running ductwork and they're running PVC pipe? Oh, it's different. The mentality of the technician is different.
Very.
Everything is different. And that is one thing we've talked about a million times is the mentality of the technician is totally different. And you have to, the sooner that you can recognize that, because I was like, I'm kind of pretty straightforward person. Everyone's going to be like, shocker. I'm like, I am who I am and I say what I say and you always know where you stand with me. And I was just like, what is the freaking problem? And it was me because I was trying to manage them as the same people and they're not. It's like, again, going back to kids, going back to class, being in the classroom, you have all, you know, I have 6 kids. So I talk about that a lot though, but I have 6 kids with 6 different personalities, 6 different behaviors, 6 different everything, right? And I was trying to make my HVAC tech or my plumbers act like my HVAC technicians, and it's just not ever going to happen.
Yeah.
But what I was going to say about the culture piece of that is we're all guilty. You know, we get really busy and then we let some of the meetings, we don't have the meeting or we don't do the one-on-ones or we don't do those things. And those are so important to stay. You have to keep those going for your culture or that's when you start dropping people.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's important too, because, you know, your team members need to know if they're going in the right direction. And so you have to be able to point them in the right direction. And you have to be able to provide them with the support that they need. And sometimes it's hard to do daily. It's hard to do weekly. You have to realize when you're a little off track and you have to get back on track and you have to be there and be able to provide that to them so that they could be successful in their role. And so, yeah, it's really important. And it's super important for your culture as well. Like you said, you know, and our culture, going back to what I had said in the beginning, I said, by God's grace, I feel like we're blessed with some really great men, right? That come into our, unfortunately, I don't have any women technicians right now, but not to say I won't have them in the future. But right now, you know, the technicians that we have are kind, they're respectful, they're courteous, they're clean, they're compassionate, they're empathetic. I mean, I really couldn't ask for much more. We have great team members. And I think that makes a big difference too. I don't know if this is going on in a different direction, but I think that has to do with our interview process with my husband and I, and the different things that we see when these applicants come and they sit in front of us, and the different things that we pull out and that I like that. And so we're picky in a sense.
Oh, yes, you have to be. And we talk about our company culture in interview, like, you know, because Oscar had a heavy commercial background and commercial is seriously a different beast. You know, he was like heavy commercial. And so some of those people, you know, they would talk to their apprentice like crap, you know, it's like that doesn't fly here. But interview, we talk about that of, you know, first of all, we are heavy female led companies. So do you have a problem with that? We've had someone say, yeah, I don't want to work for women. Okay. Then that's not going to work out here for you. But we ask the questions to make sure that they understand what they're getting into and what the environment is here, and that we're supportive and we're not like one of those companies that's like, you know, talks to each other like, you get over here and get my shit and blah, 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 blah. And it's like, that's just not who we are. And it's important to like show that in your interview.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. And so when we are interviewing, my husband and I usually interview together, and I pretty much take the lead because I like to talk. And so I I kind of take the lead, and I really want to draw the personality out of them, rather than, the technical stuff I leave to him. He can get into that, the experience, the background, but I really want to see who they are as a person, and I want to engage them in conversation. So that's kind of my role when we interview. And, like you said, it's important that they know that I am also the owner of the business as well. And you are going to take direction and lead from me as well. And I am going to support you too. And so the team that we have right now, we work really well together, and there are no issues with that. So when you said, you had somebody said, no, I don't want to work under a female lead or something like that, I haven't encountered anything like that yet. When I do, I'll let you know.
Yeah, you will. I mean, it was like, he literally said, so who exactly would I be reporting to? And we're like, all of us. And he just wasn't having that. And I'm like, that's fine. I'm glad you said that. I'm glad that you understood that's, why we're so transparent too. So, I think I could talk to you for the whole rest of the day. I have one more question for you. If you were going to give advice to maybe one of our listeners who maybe her husband is running a truck or running his own company, and she hasn't jumped in and started working with him in the business, what advice would you give her?
Well, I would probably say to her, it may be one of the best decisions that you make in your lifetime, because you have an opportunity to build a business together, and together is the key word, right? So you're not living separate lives. You're not in your day-to-day and he's in his day-to-day, and then you just come together in the evening for an hour and that type of thing. You are together all the time. You're working towards one goal. And if you have a family like I do, I have 2 young daughters. If you have children of your own, I mean, what a great, I said before, legacy to leave your kids, to show them, wow, my mom and dad worked together, and together they built this. And when they built this, they were able to give us this. And I don't think I could have done that if I stayed where I was. I had an excellent career. I was at the top of my game at the time. But if I didn't make this leap or this change at this point in my life, I would have never known how much more I could provide for my family and what I could do for them, and how strong my relationship could become with my husband, because really it was strong to begin with, but it has grown so much more because now we have to relate on a totally different level, and we understand each other differently now, and we see each other in a different light. And that's an awesome aspect. So I would say, do it. Don't let anything stop you. Just do it, because if anything bad comes of it, you always have what you were doing prior to fall back on, or you can always go in a different direction. Life doesn't end because, you might not be successful at it. You just try again and you go for something else, but you have to try.
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe for the listener who doesn't have that experience, that's okay too. Maybe working with your spouse isn't the best thing, and that's fine. It's just find what works best for you guys. But if you're really teetering on, should we try, should we do this or not? Give it a shot. Like you said, what do you have to lose? And then find some people that can be your mentors, whether that's locally in the same space, which sometimes is harder, or through social media, because the sooner that you can talk to someone that's doing the same thing that you do and understands the same thing, like that job canceled and I was waiting on that cat, I needed that cash this month, or or we screwed this up or whatever. When you can tell people that and they're experiencing the same things, there's a different type of validation, because for a long time I thought we were just failing at things until I realized, oh, you mean everyone has these same issues every day,
Yes. Yeah. You need a good support system. You have to find your friends. You have to find your team, and you do need a good mentor as well. Absolutely. To give you direction and to give you the advice and support you need. Yeah. To be successful.
For sure.
Yeah.
Well, Valerie, thank you so much for talking with me today. I'm excited to know you from here and catch up with you hopefully sometime soon. Hopefully maybe at one of the events this fall. So thank you again for being on the show.
Thank you. I had a great time. I appreciate it.
This has been Power Women of the Trades. Like what you hear so far? Leave us a review in Apple, and make sure to listen to our other episodes wherever you enjoy listening to your podcasts. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you on the next one.